Fake card. Hand it over now. Furtick threw the supermarket's lunch hour buzz like a dropped plate. What if one careless accusation could echo longer than anyone imagined? Checkout lane 6 froze. The beeping scanners stopped. The air itself seemed to lean in. Alyssa Monroe, mid-40s, poised in a navy blouse and cream slacks, blinked once. "Excuse me?" Jake Harlan, the cashier, barely looked up. "I said this card's not real. It says transaction declined. Probably stolen." Gasps from the line behind her. Someone whispered, "That's crazy. She looks normal." Alyssa steadied her breathing. "You're mistaken. Try again." Jake waved the card in the air, louder now. "Ma'am, it's not my fault you're using fake plastic." The words hung heavy, deliberate. Phones lifted. The lens lights flickered like tiny verdicts. Martha Ellis, the manager, appeared at the end of the lane, already frowning. "Jake, what's going on?" "She's got a fake card, that's what." Martha didn't even glance at Alyssa before muttering, "Let's not hold up the line." Alyssa's hand trembled as she reached for the card. She met Martha's eyes. "Are you accusing me of theft?" A shrug. "Just following procedure." A little boy in a Spider-Man shirt tugged his mother's sleeve. "Mom? Why's everyone staring?" The mother whispered. "Not our business, honey." The humiliation burned quiet and deep, face calm, heart pounding. Alyssa's chest tightened as if her own dignity had to fit inside a single breath. She placed both palms on the counter. "Run it again." Jake sighed theatrically, swiped it, and when the machine chirped the same denial, he smirked. "Told you." Alyssa took the card back carefully. "You'll regret this." He laughed under his breath. "Sure I will." Alyssa's eyes moved toward the growing semicircle of onlookers. No tears, no shouting, just one long, deliberate inhale. Behind her, Luis Ramos, the security guard, watched, arms crossed, jaw tight. His eyes followed her trembling fingers as she tucked the card away. "Keep the footage," she said quietly, to no one in particular, and walked toward the exit. The automatic doors opened with a hiss, spilling sunlight across the tile. Martha Ellis arrived in a brisk half-jog, her badge swinging against her blouse. "What's the issue here?" she asked, already sounding tired. Jake gestured toward Alyssa like she was a problem to be solved. "Card came up fake twice. She's arguing about it." The way he said she carried weight, like it explained everything, Alyssa kept her voice level. "There's money on that card. You didn't even check the name." Martha glanced briefly at the display, then back at the growing line behind them. "Let's not hold everyone up, all right?" "Ma'am, do you have another form of payment?" Alyssa exhaled slowly. "You've accused me of fraud in public. You could at least pretend to investigate before dismissing me." Jake smirked. "She's making a scene now." Martha lowered her voice, but not enough to hide her irritation. "We have to be careful. You'd be surprised how often people pull this kind of thing. People. That word again. Alyssa had heard it before, in boardrooms, restaurants, airports, always carrying the same invisible asterisk. Her fingers pressed against the counter's cool surface. "Call your bank liaison." "Run the chip manually." Martha hesitated, then shook her head. "Policy says once it flags twice, it's considered compromised." "I can't override that." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "She's pushing it too far." Another person lifted a phone higher for a clearer shot. Alyssa stood still. The world around her narrowed to the faint hum of the store lights and the squeak of a shopping cart somewhere behind her. "I understand," she said quietly. "I'll take my things and go." Jake raised an eyebrow. "So we're done here?" "For now," Alyssa replied. She gathered her purse, head high, eyes forward, leaving the groceries on the belt like abandoned proof of decency. Luis, the guard, watched her pass, saying nothing, but his jaw clenched hard enough to ache. The line moved again, business as usual, though nothing about it felt normal anymore. Alyssa Monroe walked toward the exit with the same measured calm she'd entered with, though her pulse thudded hard enough to feel in her throat. Every step echoed under the white lights, drawing more eyes than she wanted. Behind her, Jake's voice carried, "Next customer!" Too loud, too casual, as if nothing had happened. Laughter fluttered somewhere near the soda display, sharp and careless. She didn't turn. Dignity, she'd learned long ago, was sometimes the only weapon left. The automatic doors opened, spilling hot Carolina air against her face. Outside, sunlight hit her skin like judgment. She stopped just long enough to steady her breathing, counting each inhale, each tremor that refused to show on her face. From inside, Luis Ramos followed her with his eyes. He'd seen plenty of arguments before, angry customers, rude staff, but this one lingered. Something about the quiet in her voice unsettled him. Martha's heels clicked behind the register as she muttered to Jake, "You could have handled that softer." He shrugged. "If I'm wrong, she can complain." No big deal. Luis turned away before his expression betrayed him. In the parking lot, Alyssa paused beside her car. Her reflection stared back from the dark window. Still composed, but her eyes shimmered with something sharp and unshed. She swallowed it down. Her phone buzzed once in her bag. She ignored it, slipping the rejected card into her wallet, the strip glinting in the sun. Across the glass doors, she saw Martha laugh at something Jake said. It wasn't cruel laughter, not exactly, just the kind that came easy when nothing cost you. Alyssa's hand tightened on the car door handle. She whispered, "Keep laughing," barely audible, the words meant for herself as much as them. Luis watched from inside, a heaviness in his chest he couldn't explain. The doors closed between them, sealing the moment like a snapshot that wouldn't fade. The hum of the store faded as Alyssa stepped into the quiet lobby between the double doors. The air was cooler there, artificial, still carrying the faint scent of floor polish and plastic bags. She paused near the vending machine, letting her composure settle back into place. Her hands, still trembling slightly, folded around the strap of her purse until her pulse slowed. A mother pushing a cart through the exit gave her a polite, uncertain smile, the kind reserved for strangers caught in public shame. Alyssa nodded once, her face unreadable. Through the glass behind her, she could still see Jake moving at the register, his gestures quick, his grin undisturbed. Martha hovered nearby, both of them framed in the sterile fluorescents that had burned her humiliation into memory. Luis approached slowly from the store's interior. "Ma'am," he said carefully, stopping a few feet away. "Everything all right?" Alyssa met his gaze. For a second, neither spoke. Then she said, "It will be." Her voice was even, but something in it made Luis's stomach twist. He nodded, though he knew it wasn't agreement. It was apology, disguised as formality. "Policy's policy," he murmured. "Maybe that's the problem," she replied, and turned toward the sunlight outside. The parking lot stretched wide, the asphalt gleaming like molten glass under the heat. She walked across it slowly, her reflection swimming along the car doors she passed. The sound of distant traffic pulsed against the silence between each step. When she reached her car, she rested one hand on the roof before unlocking the door. A last look over her shoulder. Luis watching from behind the glass, expression conflicted, guilt settling deep. She started the engine, adjusted the mirror, and drove off without hurry. Inside, Luis whispered to no one, "She didn't deserve that." But the store had already moved on. The scanners beeped again. The hum resumed. The echo of her composure was the only thing that didn't fade. Martha Ellis shut her office door and leaned against it for a second, hand pressed to her forehead. The store's chatter still hummed faintly through the walls, the steady rhythm of a place pretending nothing had happened. She sat down, typed the incident summary into the internal system, and clicked Submit Incident Report. The corporate hotline number glowed on her screen, and she hesitated only briefly before dialing. Crescent Supermarkets, Regional Support, this is Valerie, a crisp voice answered. Hi, Valerie. It's Martha Ellis, store manager at Charlotte East, she began. We had a payment issue. Customer got hostile when her card was declined. Security was present. Situation resolved. Any property damage? No. Agement? Police involvement? Not necessary, Martha said quickly. We handled it professionally. There was a pause on the line. Valerie's tone cooled, sliding into autopilot. Did the customer appear aggravated or verbally abusive? Misinformation. She was intense, confrontational. All right, file it as level 1 agitation. Note, customer may attempt complaint escalation. Martha's fingers stilled above the keyboard. Shouldn't we review the footage first? Not required for initial classification, Valerie said. If she files a complaint, we'll review. Was the employee following transaction protocol? Yes, Martha admitted, though her stomach turned a little at how easily the word left her mouth. Then document that, Valerie said. We support our staff when they follow procedure. Anything else? Martha's throat felt dry. No, that's all. Appreciate your call. Have a great day, Valerie said, cheerful again. The line clicked dead. Martha stared at the monitor. The report cursor blinked, waiting for her to fill the field labeled Outcome, Resolved. She typed it mechanically. Customer left store without further incident. Luis knocked softly on the doorframe. You got a minute? She looked up, startled. Oh, Luis. Sure, he stepped inside, holding his phone. You might want to see this. On his screen, a social media post showed a shaky video. Jake's voice audible. The words, "Your card's fake," echoing under fluorescent light. The comments were piling up fast. Martha's pulse spiked. How'd that get out? He shrugged. Someone in line posted it. It's already at a few thousand views. Martha closed her eyes. Perfect. Luis hesitated, then said quietly, That lady didn't raise her voice once. You saw that, right? Martha didn't answer. Instead, she stared at her computer where the report still waited. After a long pause, she hit save. Corporate's got it handled, she said flatly. Luis nodded, though the words sat wrong in his chest. As he left, the monitor light glowed across Martha's face, cold, artificial, and utterly indifferent. By the next morning, the store's breakroom buzzed with gossip. The video had spread overnight, grainy, shaky, filmed from a customer's phone, but the sound was clear enough. Jake's voice carried through every speaker and screen. Your card's fake, ma'am. Jake scrolled through comments at the counter, laughing under his breath. People really got time for everything, he said. Look, half of them don't even know what they're talking about. Martha poured coffee, her movements sharp. That clip doesn't show the whole thing. It'll blow over. Exactly, Jake said, grinning. You'd think I shoved her or something. It's just words across the room. Luis stirred his cup quietly. Words can be worse, he said without looking up. Jake smirked. Not if you're right. Luis's eyes flicked toward him. Were you? The room stilled for a beat. Jake shrugged, suddenly defensive. Hey, machine flagged it. I followed policy. Not my fault if people twist it. Martha sat at the small metal table, pressing her palms against the edge. Corporate said we're fine. No need to engage online, Luis frowned. Even if it's everywhere? They'll issue a statement, she said. Something neutral. Jake laughed. Yeah, something like, we value diversity. That always works. Martha shot him a warning look, but it was too late. The words hung in the air like oil on water, thin, slick, impossible to clean. Luis finished his coffee, the bitterness sitting wrong on his tongue. You should at least apologize if you were wrong. Jake leaned back, feigning calm. You don't know that I was. Lewis met his gaze evenly. I know what I saw. The break room fell silent again. Outside the glass door, the hum of shoppers grew louder, the store still full, but the atmosphere different. People whispered at registers, glanced toward lane 6, phones raised casually as if waiting for another show. Martha stood. Enough. Just focus on work. The last thing we need is to look nervous. Lewis nodded, though his expression said otherwise. As he stepped out, he passed a teenage cashier watching the video on her phone, headphones dangling. The reflection of Alyssa's calm, steady face glowed across her screen. Luis caught his own faint reflection beside hers and muttered, Maybe some of us should look nervous. Behind him, Jake laughed again, but softer this time, like he wasn't sure who was still listening. By afternoon, the crisis had a name, Incident 47C, Customer Escalation, Charlotte East. Head office moved quickly. An email from corporate communications arrived with the subject line, Prepared response, use for media or public inquiry. The body of the message read like every sanitized apology Martha Ellis had ever seen. We take all customer experiences seriously and are committed to ensuring fairness and respect across all interactions. We are reviewing the matter internally. She printed it out anyway, clutching the paper like a lifeline. At 3 o'clock, she gathered her team near the front office. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making the silence sharper. Corporate wants consistency, she began, reading directly from the page. If anyone's approached by media or online, refer them to this statement. We don't add comments or opinions. Jake leaned against the wall, arms folded. So basically, say nothing. Martha ignored the tone. Say what's written. That's all. Luis was there too, still in his uniform, eyes tired. You're just going to call it a misunderstanding? Martha lowered the page slightly. It's what they gave us. You were there, Luis said. You saw it wasn't a misunderstanding. Her lips pressed tight. I'm not paid to rewrite corporate language, Jake scoffed. Come on, man. Everyone's acting like I yelled a slur. It was a policy check. Luis's gaze hardened. You yelled fake. Loud enough for half the store to hear. Jake shrugged. So? If she wasn't guilty, why'd she walk out? Because dignity walks before anger does, Luis said. The words cut through the air like glass. Even Martha looked up then. She folded the printed statement and tucked it back into her clipboard. We just need this to die down, she said softly, as if to herself. Outside the door, customers moved like waves through the aisles. Nothing chaotic, but charged. Every beep of the scanner seemed louder, every laugh more brittle. Luis turned to leave, but stopped. You know what's funny? He said quietly. All these statements talk about fairness, but none of them ever say sorry. Martha didn't respond. She just stood there watching the door swing shut behind him, the word sorry echoing like something long extinct. Jake muttered, Guy's taking it too seriously. Martha exhaled, exhausted. Maybe he's the only one taking it seriously at all. She looked at the corporate email one more time before slipping it into a drawer. It read clean, neutral, harmless. Everything the truth wasn't. By Thursday, Crescent supermarkets had officially entered the news cycle. Local outlets ran the clip with headlines like, Customer humiliated at checkout, viral video raises questions. On social media, strangers debated in comment threads like a digital courtroom. Some called the video another case of profiling. Others insisted race has nothing to do with it. Corporate's official account finally posted the prepared statement. We are aware of an interaction at our Charlotte East location and are reviewing it internally. We remain committed to respect and fairness for all customers. The replies came fast and unfiltered. Respect would have been checking the receipt. You can't train humanity into policy. Let's see if internal review means firing the guy or promoting him. At the store, things were quiet, but the kind of quiet that hums under tension. Customers whispered near the aisles. Some recorded casually as they shopped, phones ready like witnesses in waiting. Martha walked through lane 6, straightening products no one had touched. Jake stood nearby, jaw tight. "Why's everyone acting like I did something criminal?" he muttered. "Because you embarrassed someone in front of a crowd," Martha said evenly. Jake snapped. "It wasn't about race." Her reply came slower. "Maybe it wasn't for you." He turned away, rolling his eyes. "Corporate said they got my back. That's all that matters." Martha's silence said what her conscience didn't. Across the store, Louise stood by the front door watching another customer point toward the self-checkout area. "That's the spot," the woman whispered to her friend, "where it happened." The scene had become legend, a tourist stop for outrage. Later, in her office, Martha's phone buzzed, another email from corporate. All employees are reminded to maintain professionalism during ongoing inquiries. Do not engage with media or customers on social platforms. Below that was a small note in gray font. Do not delete existing footage unless instructed. Her hand froze over the mouse. Unless instructed. The phrasing was deliberate, cautious, legal. She clicked mark as read and leaned back, eyes drifting toward the CCTV monitor. Alyssa's still image from that day, head held high, eyes steady even under accusation, was paused mid-frame. Martha stared at it for a long moment. She whispered, "They'll bury this." Luis's voice startled her. He'd appeared in the doorway. "Maybe not this time," he said quietly. For the first time since the incident, Martha didn't argue. Friday morning arrived with heavy rain, drumming against the storefront glass. The downpour blurred everything outside. Cars, trees, even the corporate banner that read, "Proud to serve our community." Inside, the air was thick with unease. Martha sat at her desk, reviewing shift schedules, when the store phone rang. The caller ID flashed Crescent Corporate HQ. "Charlotte East, this is Martha Ellis." A pause, then a calm, clipped voice. "Martha, this is Stephen Patel from Corporate Affairs. We received a formal complaint from the customer involved in last week's incident. She's requested a review with regional leadership." Martha's stomach tightened. "A review?" "Yes. The customer has provided a full written statement, attached with documentation. She also mentioned having legal representation." Martha straightened in her chair. "Legal?" Stephen's tone stayed clinical. "It's procedural for us to follow up. Don't reach out to her directly. The case is under review." The line went dead. For a long moment, Martha didn't move. Then she clicked open her email. The name in the attachment hit like a jolt. Alyssa Monroe. Below it, the document header, "Formal complaint and notice of defamation by misconduct of employee, Jake Tanner." Her breath caught. Alyssa had signed it with a single line at the bottom. "I seek accountability, not apology." A soft knock came at the door. Luis. He stepped in, rain still dripping from his jacket. "You heard?" Martha nodded slowly. She filed a complaint. Luis gave a small, grim smile. "Good." Martha looked up at him. "You think this helps?" He leaned against the frame. "It's the first thing that feels right." Outside, Jake's voice cut through the intercom, calling for price checks like nothing had changed. But something had. The rhythm of the store felt off, as if everyone sensed a shift but couldn't name it yet. Martha looked down again at Alyssa's signature. Her hand hovered over the mouse, scrolling through the pages, calm, detailed, professional. Alyssa had documented everything, time, tone, witnesses, even the specific language used. It wasn't anger on paper, it was precision. Martha whispered to herself, "She knows exactly what she's doing." Luis folded his arms. "Yeah, he said quietly. And this time, we're the ones being watched. Rain hammered harder against the window, steady, relentless, like the sound of something cleansing the air, one drop at a time. The following Tuesday, the break room was spotless. Polished tables, untouched coffee pot, chairs arranged in a perfect circle. Martha had received the memo early that morning. Regional review scheduled. Attendees, store manager, employee in question, security officer, regional director, and customer. Crimson stood out. Jake swaggered in first, wearing a new shirt and that same half-smirk. "They're seriously doing this in person?" Martha didn't answer. Louise sat quietly beside the window, gaze fixed on the rain-smeared parking lot. At 10:05, the door opened. Regional Director Naomi Finch, sharp-suited and severe, stepped inside. Behind her came Alyssa Monroe. The air shifted instantly. Even Jake's grin faltered. Alyssa's composure was the same as before, unshaken, contained, but her presence carried weight now, the kind that bent a room toward silence. "Thank you for coming," Naomi said briskly, setting her folder down. "We'll begin by reviewing the incident." Jake leaned back, pretending ease. "Look, I didn't mean anything." "It was just a misunderstanding. I followed store procedure." Alyssa's voice was soft but unflinching. "You shouted your card's fake in front of a line of customers, then laughed about it." He shrugged. "That's not what I remember." Naomi raised a hand. "We have footage." Jake's head snapped toward her. "Footage?" "Yes," Naomi said. "From the security feed." Ms. Monroe's legal team submitted a timestamp request. Martha's pulse kicked. She glanced at Luis, who gave a small nod. He'd made sure the files weren't erased. The monitor flickered to life. Grainy footage filled the screen. Jake's body angled toward Alyssa, his tone sharp, his gesture dismissive. The sound wasn't clear, but the body language was. Everyone could see it. When the clip ended, the room stayed still. Naomi closed the folder. "Mr. Tanner, your actions reflect a breach of our conduct policy. We will proceed accordingly." Jake started to protest, but Naomi's tone cut clean through. "You embarrassed a paying customer. You violated dignity and protocol. There's nothing to debate." His voice rose, defensive, desperate. "She's blowing it out of—" Alyssa stood, calm as glass. "I'm not here for revenge," she said quietly. "Just accountability." Naomi nodded once. "You'll have it." Jake slumped back, realizing the walls had closed in. For the first time since that day, Luis allowed himself to breathe. Martha sat motionless, guilt pooling like lead in her chest. Outside, the rain had stopped, sunlight cutting through gray. It landed across Alyssa's face, soft, steady, unforgiving. The silence stretched after the footage stopped. Jake's chair creaked as he leaned back, trying to reclaim his voice. "So what now? I get written up because someone got offended?" Naomi Finch turned her attention to Alyssa. "Ms. Monroe, do you wish to make an additional statement before we conclude?" Alyssa met her gaze, then shifted to Martha, to Luis, finally landing on Jake. "Actually," she said, her tone calm but resolute, "there's something I should clarify." She reached into her leather portfolio and drew out a single envelope, plain, white, marked with a silver Crescent Supermarket seal. She slid it across the table toward Naomi. Naomi's eyes flicked down. Then they widened slightly as she read the letterhead. "This is from headquarters?" Alyssa nodded once. "Effective next quarter, I'll be joining Crescent Supermarkets as an executive advisor. Specifically, on the board's Diversity and Equity Council." The words dropped like thunder in still air. Jake blinked. "Wait, what?" Martha's heart seemed to skip a beat. Luis froze mid-breath. Naomi straightened immediately, her expression shifting from authority to recognition. "You're the Alyssa Monroe? From Eastbridge Capital?" Yes, Alyssa replied. We're one of Crescent's largest investors. I visited this location as a customer before my onboarding was finalized. Jake's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Luis exhaled softly, a small sound of disbelief that carried something close to relief. Martha stared at Alyssa like the world had just rearranged itself around her. You were a regular customer, Alyssa said evenly, and treated like a problem. Her words weren't loud, but they landed with precision, each syllable cutting cleaner than anger ever could. Naomi cleared her throat. Ms. Monroe, I assure you this matter will be resolved immediately. And on behalf of Crescent, No, Alyssa interrupted gently. You don't need to assure me. Just make sure the next person doesn't need to film their humiliation to be believed. Jake slumped in his chair, pale and silent. His earlier confidence had vanished completely. Luis glanced toward Alyssa, eyes soft with quiet respect. He whispered, Guess she didn't need revenge after all. Alyssa gathered her folder, her calm unbroken. Revenge is temporary, she said, heading for the door. But change, that's supposed to last. The door shut behind her with a whisper that felt like judgment itself. Naomi exhaled, shoulders tense. Martha, file termination paperwork for Tanner, effective immediately. Martha nodded, her voice barely steady. Yes, ma'am. Outside the window, sunlight broke through the storm clouds, illuminating the parking lot where Alyssa's car waited. Same calm poise, different power now. The meeting ended, but the story didn't. By the next morning, word had already spread through the district, whispered at registers, printed in internal memos, dissected in group chats. The woman from the viral video wasn't just a customer. She was the incoming board advisor. Corporate staff flooded the Charlotte East location like an invasion of polished shoes and clipboards. They replaced posters, reviewed policies, and conducted what they called a reputation audit. But no audit could scrub the memory of Jake Tanner's voice echoing across the internet. Luis watched from his post near the entrance as a team from headquarters installed new Customer Respect Initiative signs. He muttered under his breath, They don't even see the irony. Martha passed by him, carrying a thick stack of paperwork. Her eyes were shadowed from too many sleepless nights. They see it, she said quietly. They just don't care who noticed it first. Jake was gone. Termination notice delivered. But the aftermath lingered. Whispers of lawsuits, leaked memos, and speculation about Alyssa Monroe's influence. That afternoon, an all-staff video call was scheduled. Naomi Finch appeared on screen, crisp and composed, standing beside Alyssa. This company, Naomi began, has prided itself on community trust. But what happened here reminds us that dignity is not a slogan. It's a duty. Alyssa stood silent for a beat before she spoke. I didn't come here to shame anyone, she said, her voice measured, direct. But I needed to see the culture from the inside, to understand what people mean when they say, it's just how things are. Her gaze swept across the screen, steady, piercing. That excuse ends today. The video conference went dead quiet. Dozens of employees stared at their monitors, caught somewhere between discomfort and awe. In the break room, Luis sat forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on the feed. For the first time in years, he saw someone inside the system speaking as if justice actually mattered. When the meeting ended, Martha remained seated long after the screen faded to black. Luis broke the silence. That's what leadership looks like. Martha nodded slowly. It's what decency looks like. Outside, the sun had returned, sharp golden light spilling across the parking lot, drying the last puddles from the storm. Somewhere in the distance, a customer laughed. It was just an ordinary sound, but for once it didn't feel tainted. The store didn't change overnight. But everyone knew something had shifted, something too visible to bury, too powerful to forget. 2 weeks later, Crescent Supermarkets announced its Ethics Renewal Initiative. Alyssa Monroe's name appeared at the top of the release, Executive Advisor for Culture and Accountability. The press described it as a historic appointment. Employees knew better. It was a reckoning dressed as reform. The company released a new policy requiring recorded bias training, third-party audits, and direct accountability measures for customer relations. The statement was clean, rehearsed, but this time it had teeth. Jake Tanner's termination became official company record, filed under violation, conduct unbecoming of Crescent standards. He didn't contest it. Couldn't. His name trended online for 2 more days before vanishing beneath the churn of new scandals. At the Charlotte East store, reporters lingered outside, snapping photos of the entrance like it was a crime scene turned monument. Martha Ellis stood by the doors, greeting customers with the same professionalism she'd always shown. Only this time, something in her tone had changed. "Good morning," she said to an elderly woman passing by. Her smile wavered for just a second, enough for sincerity to slip through. Luis, stationed nearby, nodded to her quietly. "Looks like the whole country knows Lane 6 now." Martha sighed. "Yeah, and maybe that's good inside. The new posters gleamed on every wall. Respect is not optional. Integrity is policy." They looked corporate, polished, too bright, but the message had weight now. A young cashier, the same one who had once watched Alyssa's humiliation on her phone, approached Luis during her break. "Do you think she'll ever come back?" Luis smiled faintly. "If she does, it won't be as a customer." That afternoon, a regional news crew arrived. Alyssa had agreed to a brief statement outside the store. No entourage, no press handler, just her, standing in front of the automatic doors where it all began. "I didn't want a headline," she told the camera. "I wanted change, and it's only real if it lasts after people stop watching." When she turned to leave, a few shoppers clapped softly, not for the scandal, but for the way she'd faced it. From inside, Martha watched through the glass. She didn't wave, didn't call out, but her eyes followed Alyssa until she disappeared into sunlight. Luis said quietly, "Guess this is what justice looks like." Martha's answer came soft, almost like confession. "No, this is what growth looks like." The store doors slid open and closed, each movement smooth, mechanical, routine. But beneath that rhythm, something human had been restored. The headlines eventually faded, as all headlines do. But inside Crescent Supermarkets, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, introspective, changed. Impartial found herself reading every new customer service memo twice, circling words like respect and dignity, as if seeing them for the first time. Her clipboard looked the same, but she no longer checked boxes automatically. She started watching people instead, how they were treated, how they responded, how much harm could hide in a single careless tone. Luis stayed on as security, though he no longer stood by the door out of routine. Now, when he saw someone being questioned too harshly or looked at too long, he stepped in, not as a guard, but as a witness, who'd finally decided silence was part of the problem. One slow afternoon, a new trainee rang up a nervous customer whose card glitched twice. Luis stepped closer, calm and steady. "Try the chip again," he said softly. "Sometimes these machines forget who's in charge." The trainee smiled. The customer exhaled. And for a fleeting second, the air felt lighter, like redemption had taken human form in something as small as kindness. That evening, Martha locked up the store alone. Rain threatened outside, the same kind of storm that had once followed Alyssa Monroe into humiliation. She looked up through the glass, watching the reflections of the lights ripple across the wet pavement. It wasn't pride she felt. It was accountability, quiet and earned. Alyssa never returned to that location, but her presence lingered in every meeting, every decision, every nervous glance toward the customer line. She'd become the invisible conscience of the place. Weeks later, Crescent's internal newsletter quoted her directly. "Fairness doesn't begin with training. It begins with courage, the courage to pause before judging someone who doesn't look like you." Martha tore that page out and taped it inside her office door. Louise saw it once and nodded. Neither spoke about it again, but both carried it like a private oath. Outside, the parking lot lights glowed against the rain-slick asphalt, just as they had the night Alyssa walked away. Only this time, the reflection looked different. Steadier, cleaner, almost forgiving. Sometimes justice doesn't come loud. Sometimes it arrives quiet, through the people who finally choose to listen. Because dignity shouldn't need a camera to be believed.